In August 2006, Capcom released Dead Rising, an open-world action-adventure where you take the reins of freelance photojournalist Frank West as he inserts himself inside the Willamette Mall, a place currently occupied by thousands upon thousands of the undead. The game stood head and shoulders above other zombie titles, whereas the likes of Resident Evil would only occupy 2 or 3 fiends on screen at one time. Dead Rising produced hundreds. It also didn't take itself as serious as other similar titles. It let the player have a lot of fun, introducing a comical take on things. The title became so popular, it produced a further 3 in the main series, with DLC spin-offs and even a motion picture. This was one of my favourite titles back in the day when I bought it for the Xbox 360, so when Capcom announced a Deluxe Remaster on June 26th of this year, myself, alongside many other gamers, couldn't wait to get their hands on an updated version of this ever-classic, which brings us to today. Welcome to the video. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming. If you enjoy the following, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, after watching, please consider doing so. With that being said, let's get into what we came here to see. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, First Impressions. Please note, I've recorded this in the first couple of hours of gameplay as to avoid any major spoilers, but there still may be minor ones ahead. Although I'll be comparing part of the Deluxe Remaster to its original, I'll have to keep in mind that some players may not have played the first, as of course it was released a good 18 years prior. So let's begin. We start our adventure with an opening cutscene. This particular scene isn't necessarily part of the player's journey, but it gives a bit of a heads up as to what's going on, very similar to how Capcom did with the opening sequence to Resident Evil 2, referencing the truck driver. After the cutscene ends, we're introduced to our character, freelance photojournalist Frank West. Frank's flying into the fictionalized town of Willamette, Colorado as a helicopter passenger. He's had a snippet of insider knowledge that something big is going on in town and plans to investigate. As he skates over the town, he witnesses what he first believes to be a riot, but feels there's something more to this tale. After an intervention from the military as to dissuade Frank and his pilot from entering the area, Frank demands to be dropped off on the roof of the town's mall and requests to be picked up in 3 days. This sets the game's time limit feature. The pilot, Ed DeLuca, obliges before making a hasty escape himself. Upon landing at the helipad, Frank is confronted by a mysterious gentleman who recognises him as a reporter. The man refuses to tell Frank what's going on in the town, stating that he'll find out soon enough for himself. Frank enters the mall through the roof and makes his way to the entrance plaza. This is where Frank learns of exactly what's going on.
Hey, this is no time to ogle pretty girls, son. You looking to get yourself eaten alive by zombies?
What? Did you just say zombies?
Take a look out there. If those ain't zombies, what would you call them? There's been more and more of them since last night. Now, they're all that's out there.
After the scene ends, Frank is able to take photographs. Each one has a score rating which tallies up prestige points used to level up, unlock new attacks, defences, and can even increase durability and stamina, for example, among other features. As he makes his way to the rear of the mall, a further cutscene ensues.
What in the hell are you people doing? Run! Quick, move, get over here!
This is the first real piece of gameplay we get now. One of the biggest aspects of the title is introduced to us almost immediately, the ability to use almost anything as a weapon. So using the large park bench, I battled my way through the zombies to safety. After a further cutscene in a security office, Frank is given free roam to most of the mall via the ducts. This is where the game truly begins. The premise of the narrative is for Frank to find out the reason behind the outbreak, but as to avoid any major spoilers, that's all I'll say about that, so let's move on over to something other. I'll break the title down into several different categories: general gameplay and features, combat, psychopaths and strangers, new additions, and basically the not so good, before finishing with my final thoughts. I won't be comparing improved visuals, as it seems unfair to do so when comparing two titles that are 18 years apart. General gameplay and features. In the original 2006 title, Capcom used the MT Frame Network engine, but for the Deluxe Remaster, they give it an overhaul using the popular RE engine found in titles such as the more recent Resident Evil games. It definitely runs smoother than the original, but considering it's 18 years later, that's to be expected. I mentioned before about prestige points, a system implemented to allow Frank to level up. These points are a dominant part of the title and can be accrued in a manner of ways. Killing zombies for starters, assisting survivors, but also using Frank's camera. Let me give an example from very early on. As Frank leaves the security room and finds himself on the roof of the mall, there's a survivor named Jeff who's frantically searching for his wife. Frank can speak with the man, ask him to join his side and go searching for the spouse. The wife, Natalie, is literally around the corner of the building, making it an obvious find. It's just used as an introduction to the feature. Frank can earn prestige points by reuniting the pair, and as the couple rejoice, a small icon indicating a photo opportunity will arise. Snapping the picture in time will reward Frank well. Frank can then escort the two survivors back to the air ducts, where he'll be awarded with even more prestige points. Although some parts of the mall are locked off early in the title, generally most of the complex is open, allowing Frank to explore the many stores. These stores, depending on their wares, can provide Frank with an array of food for supplements, new clothing and even weaponry. The food obviously replenishes Frank's health, the clothing option allows you to customize the character to your liking, and as stated earlier, almost anything can be used as a weapon, which takes us on over to combat. Combat. The combat in the game is probably where it shines the most. Using anything that's not nailed down, Frank can defeat the undead with the likes of katanas, chainsaws, potted plants, guns of course, or sports equipment, literally anything. As Frank levels up using prestige points, he'll also unlock new physical abilities such as the dodge roll or helicopter spin, granting you new animations even when you find yourself surrounded by a horde. You can even be innovative if you wish. For example, I used a parasol to clear my way through the many enemies, and even though it wasn't very harmful to the undead, it certainly benefited me. It's features like this you'll need to pick up pretty fast in order to survive the thousands of the deadheads. Ammo is pretty scarce through the title, so you'll need to keep a close eye on your surroundings. For example, there's a gun store in the North Plaza that constantly resupplies itself, but you have to battle your way just to get there. Another option is to find undead police officers, as most of the time they will carry pistols, but be careful upon approaching as they randomly fire at their surroundings. It's not only the undead that inhabit the mall, there's also strangers. Some friendly, others not, which takes us on over to our next category. Strangers and psychopaths. Every so often, Otis, one of the surviving mall security members, will contact Frank informing him he spotted a person or persons on a monitor in need of assistance. Most of these people have barricaded themselves into stores and the like and will need convincing just to join Frank back to the security room. Each survivor has their own unique personality, preferences and requirements. For example, some may not be as mobile as others and require Frank to piggyback them to safety. Some are just frightened and wish for Frank to hold their hands whilst escorting them, but for others it can be a little more tricky. During my playthrough, there was an instant or two where I would have to physically assault the survivor to snap them out of their state of shock, but even so, there's more complicated ones than that. At one point, I came across a pair of Japanese tourists who spoke no English, barricaded in a bookstore. With Frank unable to speak Japanese, he had to pick up a book to teach him the basics just to establish communication. The survivors can also be equipped with weaponry and fed food if their health is running low. It's the little things such as this that make the title unique. And now for the psychopaths. In total, there are 16 or 17 separate psychopaths in Dead Rising. Some band together like the convicts patrolling the park area on a machine gun mounted truck, or the family of 3 snipers who aim to take down anyone. Battling these lunatics can often prove difficult, so you need to keep your wits about you when facing them. Look for key moments to attack and be strategic. Defeating them will normally reveal hostages they have taken, who Frank is then tasked with escorting back to the security room with the award of prestige points. New additions. It's been a long time since I played the original 2006 title, but one of the new additions that certainly stood out to me is when escorting a survivor. I may be wrong, but for the life of me, I can't recall the survivors pointing out hidden things to Frank. Whether it be a prestige photo opportunity or a weapon, sometimes the passenger will notify Frank of these locations.
Come on!
Frank, I can see something over there. Maybe you could use it.
Most of the in-game dialogue has been given a complete overhaul too, including the voice actor for Frank, giving it a fresh feel. Artificial intelligence has certainly improved, as the zombies seem to react quicker to your presence than I remember. Definitely one feature that has improved is when Otis calls to give Frank information. This used to halt Frank from either attacking or defending himself, making the player vulnerable. This has thankfully been adjusted. But probably the feature that has improved above all else is the addition of an autosave. Back in 2006, this wasn't present, and I would often find myself losing mounds of in-game progress just because I either forgot to head to a save location or just didn't make it in time as I was pressured because of the time limits. Now, as each sequence begins, whether it be opening a main door which requires a short loading screen or the beginning of a boss battle, the game will save your progress at these points. The not so good. As much as I am enjoying the playthrough, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Yes, there are many improved aspects to the title, but there are still some features that remain that could have been altered. An example of this is when escorting survivors. If Frank has someone in tow, when crossing a threshold that requires a loading screen, if they're not basically standing on Frank's toes, that person can be left behind in the previous section, forcing Frank to return just to call them a little closer. I found this often occurred when entering both the elevator to the security room as well as the ventilation system. Sometimes, when escorting multiple survivors, one would fall slightly behind, leaving not only Frank, but the others he's escorting vulnerable as we wait for them to catch up. Even if you try to reach their position, the others will follow unless quickly instructed otherwise, potentially worsening the situation. I played the first few hours, and the title did crash on me once, but given it occurred on launch day, I'm not going to be cursing that out too much. Upon crashing, it did automatically send a notification to Capcom about this, so hopefully a patch will improve this pretty soon. During the opening segment, when Frank is battling his way through many of the undead, the game lagged severely. This also occurred a little later when battling one of the antagonists, who shall remain nameless to avoid spoilers, but in fairness, it was only twice. It was just slightly off-putting, as one lag was at the very beginning of the title. I checked the game's required and recommended specs for Dead Rising, and to note, my PC is above the needed. Lastly, as I don't want to knock the game too much, is that I felt it way easier than the original. I always struggled with combat on the first game, often finding myself outnumbered, outgunned and outmatched. Now currently, on my first playthrough of the Deluxe Edition, I'm on case 7, pretty far into the title, and haven't died once. Not that I'm asking for the game to be damn near impossible, but it could have given more of a challenge. Whether this aspect can be altered in the menus of the title, I haven't really looked into, but this playthrough was the standard setting, nothing altered. Final thoughts. My final thoughts of the title are this: if hack and slash open world zombie infested titles are for you, then Dead Rising is a must. It's best to keep an open mind during your playthrough, as it takes itself much less serious than the likes of Resident Evil, The Last of Us or Telltale's The Walking Dead. All of those titles are heavily narrative based, and even though Dead Rising has a pretty good story to tell, there's a lot of comedy involved, whether it be the general gameplay itself or the characters. I purchased the digital deluxe edition for an additional £10 from the Steam store, totaling £49.99, and with that came an array of new outfits for Frank to wear. But if you're not bothered about such things, I'd pay the standard $39.99. If you haven't had the pleasure of playing the original Dead Rising, I'd recommend giving this a whirl, but if you have, the biggest question you need to ask yourself is it worth spending on a full price game when you've experienced the story already? Of course, there are new aspects to the title, but the narrative remains the same. Myself, although excited, was still 50-50 on this primarily due to the price, so I want to give credit to a YouTuber called Paley Points, who created the video on the subject, which in turn helped me make my decision. Their video will be placed as a card on your screen now, as the end screen to this video and in the video description below, something I highly recommend you watch if you're unsure on purchasing. They make some very good points. All in all, I'm enjoying the title so far, and after completion, I'll no doubt load it back up for a second playthrough, which by the way allows Frank to continue his current level of prestige points, allowing me a different approach to the game. Hopefully, after watching today's video, it helped you decide whether to purchase Dead Rising Deluxe Edition or not. If you enjoyed what you saw today, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Don't forget to check out Bailey Point's take on this game if you still can't decide. If you wish to see more content on this, be sure to let me know in the comment section, as I have a few ideas in the works concerning this. Thank you all for watching. You've been listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.